With Ricky, what do you think the plans are for him? I know you guys signed him again for the remainder of the season. Do you foresee him being with his team, potentially summer league, and maybe down the line?
I mean, I think those are some possibilities, and I believe that's why the decision was made to sign him for the rest of the season to continue to evaluate him as we finish up these last 4 games, but also still have the possibility of, working with him, through the early part of the offseason and possibly in preparation for summer league.
They're there's so much looking forward now, looking ahead towards next year. For you personally, like, what would you say the biggest things you'll take away from your first year, and like, how might you be different next year? Might there be something you would change? Is there anything you say, I spent too much time on this, or I didn't spend enough time on that? You know what I mean? Is there anything, like, what were the biggest learning things for you?
How much you don't control. I think the assumption is that the coach kind of controls things and is the determining factor between success or not. And I think coming in, being very excited for the opportunity, you assume that you're going to be able to influence everything that happens, and a big part of it is still controlled by others, the other team. The players you have, the type of things you're doing every day, the type of things that they're doing. And so it's still a collective effort. And that's really what comes out of this, and I think gives me even more kind of strength and conviction that I'm not alone in this. This is not just my job to turn this whole thing around, that we really are kind of all in this together. It's the players, the coaches, the front office, and our entire culture.
Is there, excuse me, is there anything like you'll say, day one next year, I want to do this, and something I didn't do this year? Is there anything that you would look at?
No, I mean, I think we still want to be a team that identifies ourselves with being able to defend and play a tough brand of basketball, to bring some intensity and some passion to what we do every night. And those are things we tried to instill, from day one this year. I think I'll be more comfortable, as a coach. I mean, when training camp started last year, I was 3 months from being a player. And so when training camp starts next year, I'll be in a different place. But, we spent all morning talking to our guys about this last week. And so, there's only so much that I'm choosing to get into, how the future is going to look out of respect for them, because they've given everything they had to a situation that, wasn't really great for a lot of guys coming into it, but they still been committed.
From a coaching standpoint, from an X's and O's standpoint, whatever, are there things maybe that you learned as you went along, like in terms of managing a game or your bench or things like that?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything became more fluid or fluent in terms of, understanding of certain things, the flow of the game, having a feel for when guys are fatiguing and how to get some different guys in. I learned something every day about the job, about myself, et cetera. And so I don't think that process will ever end, though. I took that mindset as a player, and I think as a coach the same way. You should be constantly willing to learn and improve and get better. And that's kind of something I believe really strongly in.
Was there ever a point, though, I mean, I know you've been in the moment, but was there ever a point where it wasn't about this, like you were thinking it is about the future?
No, I mean, I think it's always, you manage the now with the idea that this will impact, the future. And so, your practices in week one impact the future. The games in the first month of the season impact the future in terms of your standings and making the playoffs and all of those things. And so it all does matter, but at no point was I resigned to this being a kind of a throwaway season for next year or for the future. I don't think you can show up to work with that mentality. Mathematically, we were eliminated at some point from being in the postseason this year, so that automatically put us into, that type of long-term thinking. But in terms of showing up every day, you know, I've been too successful to allow those type of seeds to plant and to bloom, that you're just kind of going through the motions with the hopes of some things working out later. You know, you just can focus on right now.
You've played on a lot of teams that played deep into the playoffs. As a coach now, how much will you actually watch the postseason? Is it something that you'll?
Yeah, no,
closely?
quite a bit.
Yeah.
As a player, when you don't make the postseason, or the years where we got eliminated early, it's difficult to watch. You don't want to see the team that beat you. You know, you hate everybody. Basically, as a coach, there's so much to learn, you know, by watching the postseason, how other teams are playing, the type of things that they're doing at ends of games, and you know, strategy, and even listening to the coaches during timeouts, the way they're addressing their team. You know, I've even thought about how I think purposeful it could be to actually be present in person, you know, in certain environments, especially for me in the Eastern Conference compared to the West. How's it going to feel to be in Cleveland in the postseason? How's it going to feel to be in Chicago? I've never had those experiences as a player. So there are a lot of things that, you know, for me as a coach, you know, this postseason, off-season will hold.
So you're planning to do that? You're planning to attend some games?
Not planning to,
Okay.
but I've just, you know, in terms of the question of, you know, how I'm going to view this postseason compared to ones in the past, there's definitely a difference.
Would you take some players with you? I know coaches have done that, you know, in the past, that just to show them what the experience is like, because you have a lot of young guys. You know, some of them have not been through it.
It's possible. It's not something that I saw myself ever doing as a player, so I think I still, you know, will have to really shift myself in that direction. But, you know, we do have a lot of guys that haven't experienced it before, whether they're young or just, you know, haven't experienced it. And even if it's not, if I choose to go at the same time, maybe recommending to them, you know, that they take an opportunity to go and feel what the energy is like and the intensity in the building in the postseason. And that actually the reason why those teams are playing in the postseason is because those are the teams that were able to play their way in November, in January, in February with this type of intensity and focus and commitment. And that's why they're in the playoffs.
You going to miss that?
Yeah, I think so. But that only becomes fuel for, you know, working as hard as you possibly can to get back there. You know, it's not something that you have to wear forever. You experience it, and then it just becomes fuel for future success.
Is there any particular team you kind of want to keep an eye on in the East? Like, would it be like Cleveland, who could, if they keep their core together, they're going to be really good next year? You want to keep an eye on them, see how they go in the playoffs, or a team that just squeezed in the playoffs, like maybe the Nets or Boston, and maybe you can see like maybe how you might be able to transfer that to your team next year. You know what I mean, and see how a team can grow.
Not necessarily a particular team. I just think overall in the East, gaining an even greater understanding of who the teams are, their styles of play, the type of players that they'll have returning in the future. But, you know, things change so quickly in the game now that it's hard to predict that far ahead. A team in the playoffs could trade 3 guys and start rebuilding next year, and you've been planning all summer to face these 3 guys, and they're not there anymore. So it's really just about, I think, you know, watching and learning from just a basketball standpoint, not really keying in on any particular team, because at the end of the day, it's really about us becoming more of who we need to be, and not as much about the other teams.
Milwaukee won 15 games last year, which is what you guys have this year. Do you look at them as a team, you know, as an example of how quickly you can kind of turn around, make the playoffs in you know, in a short span?
I mean, I guess that's possible, but I mean, we're not here trying to squeeze in. We're not here trying to go from 15 to 36. That's just not who we are. So it can turn around quickly. It will turn around quickly, but we don't really have to put a number on it. We're 6-21 in games by 6 points or less this year. So we lost 21 games on 2 possessions. So we don't have to go from 15 to 36 next year. We can go from 15 to 63 if we really want to. But that's up to us.